Good morning, everybody. It's a little bit after 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. And just a note that Commissioner Haney is absent this morning. He is doing grandfather duty in St. Louis Park. It was Grandfather Day at the schools there, so that's very important as well. So with that, we have, next is the approval of the agenda, and we have 3 additions.
Move to approve with the additions.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Move on to citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda? I just see smiling faces out there. Okay.
It's better than
All right, we'll move on then to the approval of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Motion by Frank, second by Grant. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried, and we have minutes from September 26th and October 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Before we get to our 8:35 item, let's take these first 2 agenda items. They'll be real quick, I think. Zenas. So, Molly, do you want to come up and talk about you're looking to fill a vacancy for a social worker due to resignation?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we have I'm here to request a replacement for a social worker position in the developmental disability unit at social services due to a resignation effective October 27th. This position is primarily to do our Min Choices assessments, which is a full-time position, and that's been the caseload for this position for a number of years. So we'd ask that the board approve moving forward with filling this position, and then any backfill if there's any internal interest.
All right.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we see this one has the savings of about $9,000 on it.
Thank you for including that.
Yes, that's good. All right, any additional comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a fill of the vacancy of the public health nurse position due to resignation. Kathy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for fitting us in. We also have a vacancy. We had a resignation from one of our nurses. Kind of sad, but anyway, so we need to fill her position. And we will have some savings. She is on actually step 8, and with the shortage of nurses and the inability to recruit them, we usually get at least authorization through Brian to start on step 3. So we have applicants that we have interviewed for the other open positions, and so we still have a candidate from that pool. So we'd like to pull from, at least make an offer to that candidate before we have to re-advertise again. So I would like, I guess, authorization to be able to make an offer to the candidate that was in our last pool of applicants.
Okay, just a clarification. You said that there was going to be a savings on this one. According to the paperwork we got here, there would not be a savings.
Yeah, and we always, there's always a step 1, but we know we can't recruit a nurse at step 1, especially with experience. So it would technically be a step 3, but the person leaving is step 8.
Okay.
So we would have a savings overall because of that.
It's the payout that makes
Correct.
it negative. So you won't see it for a year.
And this nurse will be here till, let's see, her resignation date was 11/24.
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move into our 8:35 item here, and that's a request for approval of a resolution for conveyance of forfeited tax parcel in the city of Hawley. We have Zenas is here.
I'm here, yes.
Good morning.
You're Nancy.
Yes.
And Nancy is here. So Nancy, do you want to just give us a little brief start on
There was a tax forfeit piece of property several years ago. It was withheld from the sale because it contained more than 150 feet of waterway. It's been sitting out there. It's City of Holly. It's in between their wastewater area and
The golf
the
course on
golf
the east.
course. They petitioned the DNR to get the property. The DNR has recently changed how they view things. It would not require special legislative approval. They approved it, and City Hall is moving forward.
Okay, all right.
So what we're asking is for the county's consideration to convey this tax forfeit parcel, 8.95 acres, that was formerly, for those history buffs amongst us, a mill dam. In the early years of Hawley and Clay County, there was a mill dam down there, and this was the outflow from the mill dam.
Okay.
And it just went into tax forfeiture, and now we're trying to recreate a box and registering title to all of the land inside the golf course and all the recreational properties there to clean up the title.
Very good. Jenny, can you give us the, what our legal findings need to be?
Yes, absolutely. So this is like other public tax forfeit matters that the board has heard, where rather than Clay County keeping it in trust for the state of Minnesota, and this is bare vacant land at this point, the consideration is whether it should be transferred to another municipality. We've heard them mostly in the context of blighted properties before, where we've had a city or a municipality that's wanted to take that property and clean it up. This is a bit different. This isn't a blighted property, but this would come under the subdivision that talks about an authorized public use. So if this board finds that Hawley's plans would be an authorized public use and that it is in the best interests of the taxpayers, then we could transfer it to the city of Hawley.
Just to elucidate the public use, the city intends to use the property to support its public services, the wastewater treatment facilities, lift station, sanitary facility, water treatment facilities, and to preserve that property for the public, walkways or pathways, whatever might be development in the future.
Very good. That certainly satisfies the criteria and far as I'm concerned, so. All right, what's the board's wishes on this? Any questions of the board? Okay, we have a motion to
I'll second.
convey, okay, and a second. Any further discussion? Brian?
Mr. Chair, that is resolution number 217-33 that you're approving, I'm assuming? That's the motion?
Okay, 2017-33. All right.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Brian and Lori. We are going to look at the financial breakdown of the new correctional facility and law enforcement center. This is our kind of our ongoing worksheet that we have based on original prices and where we are, what we paid year to date, and what's left, and I like it.
Well, yeah, if you've got that in front of you, so this is current as of October 3rd. And it breaks down each of the projects. We've got the jail project, and the top line is actually the guaranteed maximum price that they gave us. And then a listing of other projects that are part of the jail project. And the same thing with the law enforcement center. It looks like we're almost, not quite halfway through with the jail project, but the cells will be coming in November, so that'll be.
A note this morning, I think, you know, and I signed a deal this morning on a payment, and according to a letter from Ben, he felt the jail was a little over 50% complete now.
Yeah, that was, Mr. Chair, that was my,
Well, that was your, I knew I read, it was from somebody.
and the payment is at 44%.
Okay.
But, and what I put in there is that, remember, that includes the second phase
you know,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
the laundry. So
Right.
when you talk about the cell area, you're in excess of 50%
Of
completion.
phase one, yeah.
Of phase
Okay,
one.
that's what-
That was my,
okay,
that was
that
my
was your
message,
memo.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Which makes sense when you look at the building and the walls and everything that's going in, so.
So, you know, I think just for the boards, a real quick, from my standpoint, if you look down at the total cash remaining, based on our financial package that we had and our bonds and everything that are coming in, and what we know right now, it would be to be paid out, we would have excess bonds of 1.5 million.
Correct.
So, which is exactly where we want to be right now, I think, for, you know, we still got a year of construction to go. I do want to note to you that we did upgrade one line item on here to, by an additional 200,000, which we're going to, Brian, you'll be talking to this board more about that, right, on the boiler system?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, but I think just for you know, being open about this here, the heating issues, that number used to read 375 and now it reads 586. I mean, if you recall, last week I gave a report that there was a third option that was long-term benefit to us and that includes, assuming that the board would go through and accept that, that's already into the spreadsheet, so we wanted to just get those dollars built in the event that we agreed to do it, so. Any questions of the board on it? Brian, do you want to go into some detail on it?
Well,
or-
not too much detail, but
Okay.
if you look up on the top, and that is your revenue source, and if you look at that 38,468,000, that's what's been, I'll say guaranteed, accepted. And then you go to the right column, in that area, balance remaining, that's that outstanding bond that you plan to sell. So you have to total those two together to get your revenues. I don't know if you spotted that or not. But, and then also, if you, just a point of interest, the jail bonds at 37,697,000, if you go to your other sheet on your payments, your bond, your net bond was 36 million something. I can't remember the exact dollars. And the reason why the revenue from those bonds was there was a premium paid on that bond. So you received more cash, you're paying back the bond on the 36-some million
It's
dollars.
36,150.
36,150. But you'll notice that the revenue is in excess of 37 million, and that was because of that premium. That could be kind of confusing if you were comparing notes on that. And then also, the sales tax refund, about the fifth or sixth, seventh line down there in the blue, that's an expected revenue return of $900,000 for the sales tax. So just want you to be aware of that.
For what period, for how long of a period?
That's for the whole project. We have
Oh,
not,
okay.
That's a refund
Yeah, right, that we're getting the state, yeah.
on what we pay on the materials.
right.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's
I
not-
got sales tax.
No, understandable. That's why I pointed it out, because it's,
Okay.
it's really two, it's absolutely two different things. It's, when you're building a jail, the state tax does not apply to it, but you have to qualify that.
Just a brief question in regards to the sales tax. I assume it went into effect October 1st. I haven't looked at any receipts from myself, so I didn't know, but
I've gotten a number of calls, and they seem to, everybody's commented that it has been
Okay.
on the receipt.
Now, my second question is, will we receive quarterly updates as to what that is, or is that
We get a monthly check.
monthly? Okay.
Right.
In fact, the way it was explained, yeah, there you
Two,
go.
But I mean,
So, in follow-up, it would be helpful for this board just to see what those totals are monthly, to see how we're tracking and.
yeah, we'll start getting our first check the beginning of December, and then they have a
Cleanup check.
cleanup check, because they kind of give us an estimate.
Right.
The best estimate, and then they do a cleanup, and then the
Okay.
next check.
Thank you.
Now, I looked at one of my receipts, it looked like it was a separate line item, you know, with sales tax, and there's a separate line item. It's almost like, I thought we were part of the whole deal, just raise the sales tax a little bit. I don't know whether it confuses people or not, that separate line item.
I think it's probably sometimes included and sometimes separate, depending on your software.
Okay.
I would think that's fair, because also, and Mr. Chair, remember that first confusion that came out that said it was going to be a transit tax, and I think if it
Right.
was, if you decided someday to pass that half cent transit tax for the systems, that would be on there separately too,
But-
based on software.
But when businesses go into their own software that they use for tax collections for that, they can have an option 1, an option 2, and option 3 tax. And so they probably
There you
have
go.
the state in there as 6.5 and then the local at 0.5. Not every retail establishment will do that, so you might look at some receipts that just to show one tax item.
Yeah.
The place where you went, if it happened to show it, that's probably because they entered it into their own system for that reason.
And Mr. Chair, I guess just for all of you, I know Commissioner Campbell has talked about this several times with us, and if any one of you ever want to sit down and talk about individual items, this is a lot of money. It's a future obligation for the county for 20 years, and if you want to understand it, and you probably understand it, this is reasonably simple. Lori put it together, so. No.
For you.
But this is something we started estimating the costs, and we've been just surprised at how close we've been on the cost. So this is something that we started several years ago, and it's just kind of matured, and working with Commissioner Campbell, added some different lines and some breakdowns, and so, please, if you have questions on it, feel free to ask us at any time.
Well, I think this is tracking really good. Lori, I think you would agree with that compared. And also, what this also doesn't talk about is, even based on our latest meeting yesterday, we're still looking at our contingencies available of probably in excess of $800,000 still between the two projects. That's not part of the 1.5 million either, so.
Right.
So we have things are going quite well with falling within line of what we anticipated this to be, so.
It sure seems that way, and it seems like with even both projects, of course, you're going to dig more ground when you demolish the
Right.
law enforcement center. But that's where the dangers come in as to what you run into. But, there's a few adjustments. We'll be bringing in a few more change orders, but the big change order that we'll be bringing in, and Commissioner Campbell referred to it, was the heating issue. We've talked about it a couple times. That's $586,000. But in hindsight, we would have liked to have seen that included in the original bid, but we didn't know what we had at that time. Now we have a much better view of it, and it's also going to be a heating system that improves it for the Family Service Center, for the Juvenile Center. So we think we're getting a pretty good deal, and we'll talk more about that when we bring the change order in. But it's a big deal, so we want to keep you informed as much as possible as we go along with it. So.
Well, I appreciate this. I noticed in the bills that we signed off today, I think there was $80,000 maybe plus in prisoner board for September. So,
Yeah.
while this is great and we're on track, I think those prisoner boards, when they disappear, will be really helpful to the
That'll be
levy.
nice.
So,
Yeah.
while this is a lot of money, I would like
Well, Lori, thanks again for working with us on adding that extra column. I think it's really helpful for
Well,
us to see that.
if anybody wants to see, I have a detailed spreadsheet that's behind this.
Sure.
So it automatically, so if anybody ever wants to see that, it's about this long, but.
Very well done. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Okay, next we have interviews for the Wild Rice. That's scheduled for 9 o'clock. I don't know if we're going to have any walk-ins here to come in, but I think we could probably just go ahead and take that now. And we do have an opening on the Wild Rice Watershed Board, and that's due to a resignation, right?
Yeah.
And we have one person who's interested in putting their name in here.
Our
and
condolences.
Mark?
Yes, Mark Harless.
Yes, Mark, it's good to see you again. I know you've always been very interested in watershed issues and in the Wild Rice, and it's nice to see you here.
Thank you.
And we do have your background, which is quite good. You've got an awful lot of experience in many different areas, but maybe if you want to just give a couple minutes. I know there's some questions here if the board cares to go through them or not, but maybe just a little background on yourself.
Well, moved to the area in 1981, moved to Moorhead in 1993, lived in Moorhead until 2 years ago when we moved out to our family farm between Felton and Borup. So just inside the county line, on the north edge of the county. And as I put together my thoughts for applying for this position, one of our neighbors said something that kind of struck a chord with me. He said, you know, 40, 50 years from now, our kids and grandkids aren't going to remember all the troubles that we had with flooding and with water issues. And that struck a chord with me, and I guess I realized that, you know, I don't want my grandchildren saying, Grandpa, you know, Grandpa had a chance to do something about this and didn't do anything. Why didn't Grandpa do something? So I guess I do feel a responsibility to get involved. I've been more involved from an outside kind of a third-party involvement, and I guess it's time to step up and serve on the board if that's your wishes.
Any comments, questions?
Well, I think, Mark, you have quite a respectful presence in the community. Both you and your wife have really inputted a lot into the community. And what, even though you just moved up there 2 years ago, you've been really a part of that farm for a long time, and now with Paul and
Yep.
the grandchildren that you have as well. And so I think it's really exciting that you're wanting to do this. Mark was a 4-H advisor of mine, so it's fun. He's always kind of led by example, so I think you'd be a really good presence on that board, specifically right now because there are some uncertainties in how the state is moving forward with some buffer strip pieces. I know you've had some concerns about different mapping, and I think your conversations with you will be helpful on that board.
Thank you.
And my issues with following the wild rice when it comes to flooding, of course, you've got the upper and the lower, and so it's always nice to get a perspective of both, and I think you'll do a good job with that. You also happen to have been in Moorhead, which is on the low end of things when it comes to water flowing in, so you know the impacts that it has there, so I think you'll be a good voice representing both on that. I appreciate that.
I think Mark's been involved in quite a few of the meetings that I've been going to. Yes. Mark there, so I've got acquainted with him somewhat in our conversations, and I'd have to agree with Jenny and you that he'd be a good asset, and I'd make a motion that we approve him as the representative for the Lake County and the West Watershed Board.
Okay, we have a motion and a
Second.
second to appoint Mr. Harless for the remainder of this, or it would be through June of 2018, right? That's the way I...
Yep, that's how it's printed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And that is correct, the remainder of, and you do have the option, and then at...
We
now-
can reappoint.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Well, we have to reappoint. Or, we have to
Open it
appoint
again.
somebody.
Right now, yes.
Right.
Yeah, but then we have to appoint somebody again, but he would be eligible, obviously, for...
Yes.
So
to be
don't scare
reappointed.
away.
Yeah. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Thank
Mark,
you.
thank you for your congratulations, and thank you for your willingness to serve in a public body that sometimes takes a lot of heat.
Thanks for coming in the middle of harvest as well. That's more the
My
biggest.
concern, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Stephen, are we expecting anybody from Cass County to come over here? I don't think so. Huh? Okay.
Could we do the agenda addition for?
Yeah, Brian, could we
Darren?
maybe just, because we're not that, yeah, because that's not scheduled for 9:10. Sure. Can we do yours in about 10 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
At,
Yeah.
number 3? Okay,
I just hate to do it if they come.
right. Okay, so and I think this even goes back to, I think Commissioner Mojo at one point in time raised the issue about how county residents can raise concerns or
Oh, we had a
report complaints.
paper record of
Yeah.
concerns, really.
Right.
how
And
we followed
so I think, I think Commissioner Mojo talked with our administrator, and I think Brian, and you talked to Darren, and you've got a plan,
We have a plan.
right? Is that kind of what the...
Pretty much sums it up,
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
that's
so
exactly right. This was a,
Let's hear about the...
okay, yeah, okay, go ahead.
All right, so what I did was, we have electronic forms out there already on our website, but this one is actually on our external website. And it's up right there in the corner, as you can see, it says report a concern. And what the citizens can do is go to this link if they have to contact or have been contacting somebody, and it takes us to what we use is called Seamless Docs. And this form comes up. And so if you go through it and you fill it out, it's fairly easy. I tried to make it as, one of the goals was to make it as easy as possible to fill this form out and submit it. I didn't want to have them have to sign up for accounts and all that other stuff. So basically, they just click on here. You can have time to, if they, let me go through here. Down here.
So that's their email address?
And then,
So is the asterisk there, does that mean that's required?
that is exactly right. What it does is it requires their name and their phone number.
Okay.
And then that way we can get back to them and contact them. So they really can't do this anonymously. That is one of the things that they would not be able to do. And you go down to your address, 8.7. And the nice part about this is once you start typing in their address, a lot of them come up like this. So if you fill that out, it automatically fills in all of these other blocks for you.
Okay.
And then right down here is another red asterisk where you would put in what your complaint is or issue or whatever it might be. I'm just going to put test in here right now. And then the next thing you're looking at is have you previously contacted somebody about this issue? So this is just a yes or no. I'll say yes. If yes, who? Oops, first I have to spell my name right. And then if they know which department it should go to, we have a drop down here. And what this does is it helps this issue get to the right person. If I say this needs to go to Human Resources, and then I can also click something and I can upload a file, like let's say they have a document that they want us to look at, or their whatever the case may be, they can do that
attach
too.
a document then, is that?
So
Yep.
for instance, I think part of the reason in this is it was maybe stemmed from some planning and zoning issues with people and permits. And so if someone were to take a photo of a roadway that's not being
Yep.
adhered to, then they could attach that.
Yep, if it had to do with ditches or roads or culverts or whatever the case may be, they can upload it right there. It gives the person that's looking at it a little bit more information.
Right, and there was a, where you put in test, you could put in the explanation, but yeah, but think about that from the public standpoint. If there's a washboardy road, that should go to highway. If it's garbage on the road, maybe solid waste. If it's weeds in the ditch, they don't know who to contact, it'll come in and we can forward it to the property department. So there's a lot of different areas, and in this world of electronics, and I go back to Commissioner Mojo suggested this, that the public, sometimes they don't call, but they will go on the internet and fill something out, because that's the world we live in nowadays. So I think it'll be something that'll be pretty valuable into the future. And then he's at where you submit it.
Yep, and then all it has to do is submit it. It says you've completed your submission, and then sometimes, then they can also download this of what they submitted.
Okay.
So they can see, they'll get a copy of what they just submitted as well. What ends up happening then is this will go as an email, and I have each of those departments, it's tied to their email address. So if, like they select Human Resources, it'll come to me. If they select solid waste, it'll go to Kurt, and then they can take care of it. I also get a copy of it, so it doesn't just go to them. And
So
then
you get a copy of all?
I get all of them, I get a copy of
So
all of them.
there could be a
that are
follow-up then
Yep.
internally? Good. That's
Yep.
what I was wondering about.
And then what ends up happening is I go on the back side of this seamless docs, and I can print off all the things that have been submitted so far.
Right.
And then probably at our managers' meetings or somewhere, then I'll have some kind of.
Well, I think it's a good idea that you get them, not necessarily as your role as Human Resources Director, but also your role as Assistant County Administrator.
Yeah.
I think that's more, because it is an administrative function, but I think Brian's got it, I just think that that's a good place for it to be.
Yep. And it just, it has two people looking at it then, so
Yeah.
that if the department head is out on vacation or something, I can at least call the person back and let them know that it's at least being taken care of, or give them an update that the person will be back on vacation or whatever the case may be. So-
Since I'm naive in computers, how do I know this form is there?
How do you know it's there? Hopefully the person calls you back right away and says, hey, we received your complaint.
No,
No.
I mean, but if I got a complaint to the county, how do I know I can use this form?
It's,
Can you go back to page 1, or your very first page there, where you, on the
Yep.
website?
The website?
And I think I can answer that because I'm not a big fan of computers either. And I think picking up the phone sometimes and calling, but since we're in this electronic world, a lot of people do like to go on the web and go to Clay County. And like he said, right up there, now we called it a report, a concern, rather than a complaint.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to complain, but they will share a concern with you. So.
and it's just another avenue, really.
just an
I mean,
option.
Could we change that to a red font?
I would have to get with IT.
I know you can't, but I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if that would be, sometimes it looks like it can get lost in with everything else.
We can, I'll talk to IT and see if they can.
It's like when you see places where there's code red, it actually has red font.
Yeah.
So, but it's just something to,
To your question though, Frank, I think that, our phones will still ring because there will be complaints on certain
Oh,
things.
yeah, I know that.
And I think it's, one, by doing this, having this presentation, it'll be on YouTube and the Access channel that this is available. But also, if there seems to be issues that I'm hearing from people that we may not have follow-ups on, I can say, well, let's also do this, let's also have a trail. And I think that's what I like about the fact that it will go to two different departments, because people do take vacation and staff
Right.
will be out. And sometimes if a resident doesn't get a call back after a couple days, they think that nobody really cares about it. I mean, they don't know someone's out, but.
Right.
I was just wondering whether we should, if I get a call concerning a road, should I fill out this form for the,
When you were asking that, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Gross, that was, I was going in the back of my mind, either a commissioner, if you wanted to make a point, fill it out, or you could say to the constituent that's calling you, do me a favor, go to our website, it's up in the right-hand corner, and document this. Then I'll know it gets documented, and so either way, it just helps document things. And
well, that's, the
causes
reason
for
I say that,
follow-up.
is sometimes I'll get a call and I'll tell someone about it.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's follow-up or not.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I get another call, are you gonna do something about it, It's just,
Well, and that's something else that we need to do better too, though. If you are reporting an incident or a situation to a department, that department should get back to you that that's been
well, that's
rectified.
probably where we need another, okay, very good.
So that is, it's good to know
yeah.
that
Should
you're
have a concern.
completing that circle, because it should be completed. And
It just, like Commissioner Mosier said, it's just another avenue that people can use to report something to us.
No,
I mean,
think
it's
I
actually,
think it's good, but.
it's been up for, probably, 6 weeks now, five or 6 weeks now, so.
But like I say, I don't go on the websites,
Right.
so
We understand.
I'll use a phone and call
Yep.
somebody, and just-
Yep.
so there really is no paper trail when I call somebody, and,
Correct. And sometimes that's the unfortunate thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Where this would help that, and if you get burned on it once or twice, you're gonna say, I'm gonna use this.
Yeah, I think it's great, I think it's great.
Good idea.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Okay, well, we can move into, Stephen's got a couple of items here. Good morning, Stephen.
Morning.
A lot of activity going on in your area, huh?
There is.
All right, so we have a request for approval for the 2018 bed purchase contract for Clay County's share of the secure portion of the...
Yes.
Okay.
As you guys are aware, we're part of an 11-county cooperative service agreement contract, and generally we deal with these contracts in August. With all the activity that's been going on, our advisory board determined that we would wait to find a few more answers, so we're here a little later than normal. My request before the board today would be that Clay County purchase 10 beds for 2018. Currently, Clay County is purchasing 9 beds this year. We've seen again an increase right now. Clay County is averaging about 9.6 beds per day. At one point this year, we were sitting over 11, and so we've seen again quite a need. I think two things for the board's understanding of justification to go from 9 to 10 is certainly at different times of the year we've had 11, 12, 14 Clay County kids in the juvenile facility, so we certainly have a need from that standpoint. The other thing is our advisory board this past summer agreed that since 2009 counties would purchase beds like this, and then if there were space and space allowed them to put more kids than what they've utilized, we would allow that. This year they've determined that we're no longer going to do that, and so counties will have to pay a per diem once they've reached the number of days that they've bought, and so that will be $270 per day. And so there's a benefit, I think, for our member counties to purchase what they're as close to what they're going to need as possible. And so that would be the request. The bed purchase price is $83,500. That's the same, $83,500. That's the same price as what it is in 2017. And so we would be requesting a total amount of $835,000.
And that's the amount that you did have in the 2018 budget, right?
That's correct.
Approved
Yes.
through the preliminary?
Yes.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
I just had a quick comment. I've kind of been critical about buying quarter beds and half beds, and I realize this kind of means that counties, including us, need to pony up probably when it comes to beds, but I think in the long run, this is really a much better agreement.
Commissioner Mojo and other commissioners, what you just said, we've heard that from other member counties as well, and as a matter of fact, you're gonna see coming forward a new proposal, and it's an idea that Commissioner Whalen presented out there, that the goal is to get away from buying beds, and it's going to go based on, we're recommending that it be based on a 2-year history of actual usage. And whatever your two-year history is, that becomes your percentage for, for responsibility of the next year's budget. So it's something that we're in the works right now. Jenny Samars has been doing an awful lot of work on it. And once we get through this, we're going to be presenting that Thursday of this week to our 11 county members. And once we go through that first phase, we'll bring it to our full board. And I mentioned a while back that there would probably be a joint meeting of all member counties to go over this. It's a big deal because we're asking for a long-term commitment for everybody. So, but we'll keep you informed. But that's the goal, is to get away from this quarter bed, half bed stuff.
That's a good idea, Graham.
Do all the counties use it? I mean, what is this, 10 counties, 11 counties?
11 counties, yeah.
Have they all got it used every year? Do we have a county that hasn't used it for a year?
As of right now, we don't, but we have some of our smaller counties, it may be
I'm sure you're right.
months in between sometimes.
Yeah, but every year they use something.
Yeah,
And with the new agreement that's proposed, there'll be a minimum amount buy-in for any county, so
you know,
If
if
you're-
you don't use it for the year, you'll still be paying to be a member of the organization.
If you have a 2-year average of 0, you're still going to have a minimum required
That
payment.
was the lead up to my question.
Yeah.
Whether you, if I don't use it for 2 years.
They still have to pay for the availability.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, so, yeah, that's good. All right, good questions. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Brian, did you want to?
Yeah, I do. I just have a budget comment on this. You know, when we went through and you passed the preliminary levy, we talked about some of the major issues that affected that levy. Well, here you just added a bed of $83,500. That has to go somewhere as well, too, and it's onto the levy is what it is. So, you know, just, these are some of the side things that affect the levy as well. So, I mean, and we've talked about it all year long. The juvenile count is up, the out-of-home placement is up, and our prisoner count is up, and it's all big dollars.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We'll move in then to item number 6, and that's a request for approval of a contract to utilize Cass County 11-bed secure facility for overflow purposes.
I apologize for this not being part of the packet. I just received this this morning from County Administrator Wilson in Cass County. Back in August of this year, this board approved or accepted the ability to utilize the vacated 11-bed secure juvenile facility to deal with our overflow short-term issues. At that time, this board wanted to make sure that we had an operating contract drawn up between the counties before we move forward. And so our board worked, our staff has worked with Cass County. Most recently, Jenny has worked with the Cass County Attorney's Office to formulate this agreement. And so we settled on utilization of this facility again for overnight purposes on overflow only. We'll be housing all the kids there during the evening / overnight, and we'll be bringing them back to the facility each day to participate in school, medical, and all of the programming. The kids who are in the facility will be North Dakota youth. Not any Minnesota kids will be going across to this facility. But for example, today, it would be a benefit to our facility because we have 11 Cass County kids in the facility. So if we were in need of services, we would have the ability to move them across. And so that was a positive. We worked in collaboration with Cass County to get their juvenile detention standards, and we've established a policy and a rule book that has met the Department of Corrections Inspection Division in North Dakota's standards. And so we've, to this point, we've received that approval. We've had a fire inspection. We're just have one more piece of the health inspection that we have to get a couple things done. Once that's done, we should have all the clear from all of our major issues, and we're hoping to have that health inspection completed tomorrow. I think one of the concerns was making sure that at the initial offer, Cass County had stated that they were going to provide this to the Cooperative Service Group at no cost. And that contract does lay that out, that they are assuming responsibility for the facility, for the lawn care, snow removal, ensuring that all the plumbing, wiring, and electrical heating is all taken care of, and that no other funds will be transferred between Cass and Clay. So the contract is initially set up for 2 years. It has the ability to be extended at the request of either side. But the intent is from Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Steen has stated that we would be able to utilize that until the facility remodel expansion were to be completed. So there is a 60-day out on either side that is also included that. I know that there's a concern with liability insurance pieces, and Jenny looked into that pretty extensively, and so that's laid out also in the contract.
Okay. Jenny, do you, Grant?
I was just going to say what a great deal. I mean, from it'll
And great work on your part, Steve.
Thank you.
It's been an issue for quite a while, and it's going to resolve a lot of problems until we get this expansion done. So thanks to Cass County again, Ann, for all your great work. So.
Jenny, Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I know the board's concern, that I heard at least directed towards me when we started talking about this was the liability piece, the insurance information and so forth. So with Steve, we have looked into the insurance piece quite detailed. I've been in contact with Jane Hanninger at MCIT several times. We've been discussing the best way to do this, and we had some concerns. We will never have a guarantee that we will have zero liability. I mean, that comes with any relationship. So this protects us. These are Minnesota employees. They will remain Minnesota employees. The fact that it's North Dakota youth that's going over and not Minnesota youth is a critical factor as well. So this does cover our liability concerns, again, to the extent that we could cover them in any situation. So I worked with Tristan Van de Streek in the Cass County State's Attorney's Office, and he was also satisfied with that liability piece. And yeah, this is a great agreement and a great cooperative effort. So,
And just to also state that yesterday, the Cass County Board yesterday afternoon did unanimously approve the contract.
You know, just a point of clarification here, where this facility is free of charge to you, is however the operation is not free.
That's correct.
The operation still requires, and our board, subject to this agreement being done, has already authorized you to hire the people to work it, which we
Correct.
expect will end up over here anyway.
Correct.
And I'm, you know, exactly what you talked about today would be a perfect example of that. Those 11 would then be moved out, which then also opens up the ability to bring in the non-member revenue.
Correct.
Right, and that's what our goal is, to have that non-member revenue cover the cost of the labor.
That's correct.
Right, that's what we're hopeful for. Right, Brian, are you, isn't that, we've talked about that?
Oh, yeah, I'm just terribly excited about this. And if I may, I just echo what Commissioner Wayland just said about Steve's effort here. I'm thinking of 2 years ago when we went down to Otter Tail County to look at some facilities, and Steve and I were driving back, and we said, we gotta have an extra $1 million if we're gonna do this, because of transportation and different things, and to see, here we are, basically 2 years later, and he's got a temporary fix to this with something that's workable, with it's in their community. It's just, I'm just very, very proud of the fact that Steve and his staff and Clay County have accomplished this overcrowding issue for it's got to be just a relief for you.
We're very excited.
Yeah, it is. It's really good news, Mr. Chair.
I'll move to approve the agreement.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Stephen. All right, so we'll move into our committee reports. Commissioner Gross, would you like to start this morning?
Sure.
And I think Commissioner Haney sent me an email this morning saying that you were both at a meeting together or something, and that you could give the report on it or something. Okay.
Tuesday, I was at a Heartland Trail meeting. We're just going over strategy, how to promote Heartland Trail. There's Ben Lean is drafting some sort of bill to try and get some funds for the Heartland Trail. Hopefully that'll happen someday, but also they're looking at letters of support, so I don't know whether they're going to be going around for requesting a letter of support for the Heartland Trail from different entities, from cities and from townships, probably from the townships too, and the county. And they're looking at who's going to carry this thing, stuff like that, and I think they're referring to the DNR being a focal point on that. And also there, tomorrow, there's at Detroit Lakes, I think it's at 9 o'clock tomorrow, yeah, 10 o'clock, excuse me, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Detroit Lakes, they're gonna go over the bike trail for the area. So if anybody can make that meeting, I'm not gonna be able to make that meeting,
I'm
but,
planning on going, so.
okay. So that, okay, and that covered the, next thing, the Wild Rice Watershed Board, I was on Wednesday morning. They had quite a discussion on whether the state agencies need permit. There's a project that state agencies working on. They wanted to know whether they needed permit and stuff like that. They had a long discussion on that. They had a very good update on Kurt on the board up there. He gave a very good update on the FM diversion. He's on some sort of board either with the downstream, and gave a very good update. We was at some meeting and really clarified how it's going and stuff like that. It's a good report that Kurt gave there. Thursday, the flood, the FM Flood Authority, Commissioner Campbell and I were there. It was short, the meeting was short, but then there was an executive session that issues were discussed on a procedure. Friday, the campus improvement, where Commissioner Haney and I were there. Further discussion on moving some people around over in the Family Service Center because Steve will need some administrative offices space, so that's moving along pretty good. So we're gonna, some more work is gonna be done on that this week, and we'll have another meeting on Monday to see how that's coming along. So those are my meetings.
Yeah, that's the campus improvement was the one that Commissioner Haney said. Okay. Commissioner Mojo?
Yep. Last week I attended the SWCD meeting. They approved some cost share contracts for assistance with buffer planting, and there is still a pretty considerable amount of dollars that are still available for that. So even though there's a November 1st deadline for getting those in, if the dollars are spoken for before March, that's still okay. So any landowners that have things that need to get into buffer, have them contact the SWCD on that. We also talked a little bit about out of 150 landowners in Clay County that are needing buffers, we are at 91% compliance for property owners, so that's a really good thing. We talked about the draft ordinance language that planning and actually Jenny drafted in regards to our policy there. The review by Tom Guile from Bowser came back with just a few tweaks, but overall they approved it, which is good. Our public hearing on that is October 24th. They had approved the 2018 tree program rates. There was a slight increase to reflect what they can purchase them for, and talked a little bit about the wild rice manager appointment that we talked about this morning. Yesterday I attended a MetroCog executive committee where we approved a new hire for the advertised position. That is good to get that in, and then also had some other HR issues we discussed, and that concludes my reports.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Whalen?
Yesterday I was in East Grand Forks for Land of the Dancing Sky meeting, the area agency on aging, and just did general business and updates from the staff, and a lot of discussion on, there's some concern with, funding issues and grants that have been available and whether they'll still be there with the way things are going politically in the country, but I think everybody's still hopeful that things will be there for for 18 everything is still okay, and hopefully it'll continue that way. And then I was in St. Paul last week for the AMC, and they asked me to be on a committee with the Department of Corrections, which is reviewing and revising the 2911 rules, which are the rules that apply to local jails, and it's regarding the mental health issues that all local jails are dealing with. And the guy from the Department of Corrections, the manager, The first thing he brought up is what we're doing in Clay County with their new jail, and gave us a lot of accolades about that. So, but I think it's a good, it's probably good to be there. Myself and the commissioner from Hennepin County are the two commissioners on the committee, and then there's a number of jail administrators from around the state, and you know, so the objective is to make rules that are reasonable, that aren't going to cost us all a whole lot of money once they're put in place. So we're going to have, we're hoping we can accomplish what we need to in probably 3 or 4 meetings. I guess time will tell. So
appointment to that?
I don't think so. It's through the AMC, and it's part of the Public Safety Committee, so I don't think I need another appointment for that. So, but that was it for me.
Very good, thank you.
I did have one other one.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I met yesterday with a landowner over by Turtle Lake. There was some concerns on some issues, and he'd met with Bruce Jaster and Tim in regards to it. So part of the conversation stemmed from some possible ordinance language in referring to backlots that we talked about at Planning Commission. So just heard those concerns, and we'll forward those on to the proper areas.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, last week, my first meeting of the week last week was a controversial one, and it was one where I was invited to attend a meeting as a member of the Diversion Authority, and also because I am the chair of the county board, to attend a meeting at the Fargo Public Library that was hosted by the Army Corps of Engineers to give an update. And of course there was an awful lot of concerns about that being a closed meeting. There was representation from Senator Hoeven was there from North Dakota, and all of the federal delegation from both sides were invited, as well as the 2 governors. Some could make it and some couldn't because of schedules. And all the federal delegation, if they weren't there, they had a representative there. And it was what I thought it was a really good meeting, and I was really disappointed that it wasn't open to the public, because the dialogue was really good, and it was something that I thought the public should have heard, because there was really good dialogue about what needs to be done. And I so stated that at Thursday's meeting of the Diversion Authority. As a matter of fact, I told them that if they're going to have these meetings again in the future, don't invite me unless the press can be there. I think that's the way we all need to be on those types. And now there's a difference between discussing logistics of the project and the good and the bad and the ugly of these projects. There's another thing, though, where we absolutely need to reserve our right to go to closed session, and that's to deal with legal issues. And I'll always support that, and just like anybody would, that you need to be able to go in and not when you're dealing with legal issues. So anyway, that was Wednesday, and it was a really good meeting, and unfortunately, we didn't get it reported on. And then Thursday was a Diversion Authority meeting, and there was just one item that was on the agenda, and that was to deal with some in-town levy work that needed to be finalized. And then we did go into closed session, and that was completely in regards to discussions regarding legal options in the future. That same afternoon, I did meet with our Administrator Brian Berg and Stephen Larson and Jenny and Grant. You were out of town, so you weren't able to be there, but there's been preparation of a draft of what a future cooperative service agreement would look like for the West Central. We went through that first draft, and between all of us, we each had some suggested changes. We've done those, and we're going to continue working on that, presenting it Thursday. As a matter of fact, I don't have any problem with sending the draft out to other members of the board for review now. It certainly wouldn't hurt, so that you can have it. So, but so you can see what the dialogue is about that. And then yesterday afternoon, we did have our jail construction meeting. I know Commissioner Whalen could not be there. He was at other functions, and we've kind of talked about that this morning already. It proceeds well. There's a lot of smaller integral things that we don't really need to be involved with a lot of stuff, but we're there and we're hearing it firsthand. It might be dealing with how locks work, how security videos and all that kind of thing, but that's something but it's still part of it, and it's nice to see all of our county staff and Morehead PD and all of them working together to come up with the right answers for the way that should be done. That's all I had. So, Brian.
I was going to say, I was going to report more on the diversion meeting, but I knew you could come up with a lot more information on that. I was going to let you get that sounding board.
All right, okay. All right, Brian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended that infamous diversion meeting as well, plus the Diversion Authority Board meeting, and then I had the Administrative Advisory meeting Friday morning, and all kind of centered around the same topic of where do we go from here? So strategies on it, and I guess there's a theme, and you have expressed that the theme has to change, and I think it is. So that's a good thing. We did have our first meeting in regards to reviewing a land management office, and what staff is looking at is we're looking at, are there some efficiencies to be gained by moving some of these offices together, particularly concentrating, and I did in a memo to you folks, the planning and zoning function of land management could probably be better served intermingling with some of the other land management functions, and we're going to work through some of the issues and some of the advantages on that before we bring some suggestions to you guys through whatever means, whether it be the PIC committee or whatever. Dealt with some personnel issues, personnel evaluations and personnel issues. Darren and I have spent quite a bit of time in the last week or two, I guess, because there's coming at us from every angle, it seems like, but we're working through them. Construction meetings already been talked about, and a thought for you guys to ponder. You heard, I don't know if you heard it on the news or not, but I think it was West Fargo that had planted some fruit trees in some vacant lots. And, you know, you're struggling with those lots along the river that you had to river buy, or you use state money to buy out floodland. And then you removed and they're kind of just wasteland along the river. Might be something you'd want to consider. I know we've talked about garden spots, and that's too much maintenance and weeds and things, but you know, it wouldn't hurt to get maybe soil and water involved and plant some trees. They don't have to be fruit trees, but you know, you want to talk about this garden program. What would be wrong with planting some different types of fruit trees that people could actually harvest?
Actually, SWCD and River Keepers have reached out to me within probably the last 4 weeks to do something similar.
Okay.
Not necessarily fruit trees, but to partner with planting trees in those lots, but fruit trees would be. Yeah,
or other trees,
Yep.
just something.
Yeah, I was gonna say Christine Holland at River Keepers would be, I know they go out and plant trees all the time, and it's actually good stabilization too for the
good stabilization
riverbanks. So
that's exactly right, and something that would produce something in future years. So might be something you want to think about for the use of that property, because you can't sell it. It'd be nice to sell it, but so whatever. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Colleen, you have anything? Okay.
No, thank you.
With that, we will be adjourned.